Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
taken from this weekend, I think maybe when my great-great-great-grandchildren find this book, it will probably be a sacred text in our household. I'm going to actually, so when I see you in May in Vienna, you won't think I'm stalking you, so I will.
You're going to be there?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Oh, that's great.
So I'll save some questions for there. But first of all, I want to say that in the book where you talk about the gurus, and I want to thank you for dealing with the issue of the gurus, and you say, kind of like keep the distance, have to juggle that balance between the gurus. I think that's important with ministers and their parishioners, and I think that was really important, that section. So I just want to thank you for, because that's
In case you don't know what she's talking about, there were guru scandals in the 70s. There was misbehavior. And that was, I had to address that in telling the history. And I ended up spending more time and sweat on that chapter, which is the smallest in the book. And I still get angry emails. But it was a very important issue, and of course it has ramifications beyond gurus from India, but all authority figures, and yeah.
So I think as well how you dealt with that, but basically saying you have to that's a constant balance between the relationship between your guru and most of you guys know my guru is Reverend Sylvia Sumter, who was a unity minister, and it's, you can kind of idolize them, so I think that really helped me. But my question is, do you think that that we will reach a critical mass where the larger meaning of yoga will emerge among the students that are basically bending and twisting? I mean, it's been almost 100 years.
I know.
Plus, are we ever going to reach that critical mass where when I say I'm a yogi, people don't think that I'm going to the gym and really understand what that says when I say I'm a yogi?
Yeah, this is a complicated issue, but thanks for bringing it up. And I've had to address this. I've had to write about it. In fact, my last post on Huffington Post was about this court case in Encinitas, California, where the school system is teaching basic physical yoga, and people are claiming it's religion and it's a violation. You heard me define yoga before. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, asana, physical postures that have become synonymous with yoga now, they're part of the 8 limbs of yoga and classical yoga. But the classical text, Patanjali, asana just refers to sitting posture for meditation. It has nothing, this yoga means union, it means divine union. As I said in my Huffington Post piece, it doesn't mean the union of the head to the knee. It means the union of the individual personality with the cosmos, with the universe, with the oneness of tattvam asi, of the awakening to what we are. You're yogis. All of you in your silent meditation, you are yogis. You may never bend or twist or do what people call yoga, but you're yogis. Anybody who seeks unity is a yogi. That's that's real unity. I mean, your name is yoga, in a sense. And so that's what yoga is. And there is a crying need at the moment to remind the world that yoga isn't just these physical postures. I suspect that what's going to happen is people will become discerning, and there are an awful lot of people like me who are very concerned that the deeper meaning of yoga does not get lost. And I think they'll succeed, because even the people coming to yoga classes to lose weight or to look good in a bathing suit, eventually, they start to get that there's more to it. and it's kind of built into the teaching and the practice. So it'll happen, and I think there'll be a distinction between just the physical practices. It'll be a different name, or people will just learn to say hatha yoga instead of thinking that's what yoga is. But it'll take time. There'll be a sorting out. Yeah. There are microphones.
Yeah, first of all,
Oh.
thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation,
Thank
I believe.
you, Paul.
All right. The question I have is, they say there's a new Buddhism now, that as a result of the influence of Buddhism in America, there's such a thing as American Buddhism. It's different from Buddhism as practiced elsewhere. Do you think that's going to happen with Vedanta, with Hindu spirituality, or has it already happened?
Yeah, it already has. People, it's interesting, and I don't understand why, but it's been going on ever since the first Vedanta Society, in 1893. There's been an adaptation to America. I mean, all the gurus who came here, Kriya Yoga, as Yogananda's lineage, it's different here than it is in India. Because we're Americans, and all the great teachers who came here were very skilled in adapting the teachings to the West, because they understood that there's cultural differences, language differences, and so forth. When TM was so big and I was teaching, people from all walks of life were coming, and we learned how to speak to everybody in there. So it already is, but it's somehow not called that. But maybe because what we think of as Hinduism is so diverse,
Right.
and because we associate Hinduism with one country, India, and the religion of that country, whereas Buddhism came from some from Tibet, some from Japan, some from Burma, some from Sri Lanka, and there was different teachings of Buddhism, and then it got adapted to the West, and the word Buddhism was retained. But there is already an American Vedanta. It's just very diverse. It's not just one thing. There's an American yoga.
So the second part of that question then is, what do you foresee as the interface between, say, Hindu communities in America who are still practicing a more traditional Indian philosophy, and this new American Vedanta?
This is interesting.
And how do they, blend together?
Yeah, that remains to be seen, because tomorrow I am speaking at the Kansas City Hindu Temple. Tomorrow afternoon, 2 of my friends from there are here. And I've often noticed, because since American Veda came out, I speak at different places. There are times I speak and I'm the only non-Indian person in the room. Other times I'm at a yoga studio or something and there's nobody of Indian descent. But they are all, they have so much more in common. But the immigration from India is still relatively new. That only started in the mid-60s when the immigration laws changed. So now the Hindu temples, where you see a more traditional form of Hinduism practice, where it resembles daily, everyday practice in India, that's relatively new to America. And it's part of the fabric of this transmission from the East, but it's a relatively new one. But now there are first and second generation American-born Hindus, and they go to school with Americans, and they'll go to a yoga class, and then the yoga students who are friends of theirs might go to the temple. So you'll start to see more of an integration, and it'll just add to the tapestry of what's possible.
Are you familiar with the movie Komori?
The movie?
Komori.
Yes,
Yes.
I saw it.
Anybody else know what we're talking
Yeah, it's
about?
great.
It's an American of Indian descent.
Right.
Whose grandmother, whatever, still has this distinct Indian accent, and he decides, and he's from New Jersey, and speaks standard English without an accent. he decides to create a religion. Decides to create and become a guru. And he puts together a little team to help him. And he goes out and picks Arizona because he figures they're gullible down there. And I'm serious. And he went down there as a yogi and started teaching and inventing yoga things, inventing teachings, inventing chants that had nothing to do with Sanskrit. And people came in.
But he mastered the language.
Yes, he
and
did
he
very
got
well.
The right accent from his
Perfect.
New Jersey roots.
And it's funny because at first he was skeptical, but his message, Unity folks, is there's nothing different about me. You have the divine in you too. And I thought, oh my God, this guy's got it. And at the end, he's really, humble about the whole process. And the group he gathered, a couple of people go out irate when they find out, but others gather around and give him a big hug and say, yeah, way to go, that was great. Because they've changed their lives by adapting this, I can do it, I have the divine within me attitude. And I wondered if
yeah, I saw it, and it's brilliantly done. And he set out to make a movie of this, and it's a fairly well-made movie. And you're right. I mean, he's an American guy. He didn't have anything to do with his own heritage. And he said, I bet I could be a guru and get followers. Let's film it and see what happens. And one of the things that's interesting, and it goes back to your question, is no matter how many times he told them, you must rely on yourself and don't become dependent on me, they treated him like, the divine incarnation. And he was this engineer from New Jersey. And but he had all the trappings, and he knew what to say, and he could do it. So it shows, how you can be fooled. I was thinking of doing it myself. 'Cause if I were to put on robes and grow a beard and get the accent right, you know how many more books I'd sell?
I would like to know, are Amma Bhagavan and the Oneness University in India, are they part of this particular?
Yeah, they came along and they got sort of popular toward the end of the time I was writing the book. So there's not much about them in there. And I've heard good things, I've heard negative things, and I haven't heard much about them in the last few years, so I don't know what's gone on with them. But there are many, many. One of the things I discovered in writing the book, and I thought I was well informed when I started writing it, but there were many more gurus and swamis and little ashrams in America than I realized. Many more came here. They just didn't have big followings. They had small group followings. And then there's phenomena like this oneness thing. And I mean, they didn't all have the advantage of attracting celebrities or have good marketing people. And there are many more than you might realize. I'll give you one example. There was a teacher in Amityville, Long Island in the 70s. She was from India. She was a householder. And she had a family, and she started teaching and having an ashram. She was well learned. And she had a small group of followers in Long Island. I was living in New York City at the time. I'd never heard of her. How did I hear of her? One of the leading scholars of Indian philosophy, a theologian and a yogi, is named Christopher Chappell, and he became a friend of mine. I interviewed him for the book, and he was a disciple of hers in the 70s as a student. And he went on to have a big influence as a scholar. And, she had this little ashram, and there were a number of those. And some of them you'll never hear about. But some produce somebody like Christopher Chappell, and so their impact on the world is far greater than what they did. But I haven't had that feeling about the oneness people. I know a lot of people were excited about it for a while, but haven't heard much lately. Who has the mic?
I have the mic.
Yes, Tomas.
Just before I came in this room for your presentation, I was on Skype with a female friend who is in Nepal, and she has been there for a little less than a month, I think.
She's
now.
where?
In Nepal.
In Nepal.
together with her 15-year-old daughter. And I told her, now I'm going into this presentation, and I told her the name of your presentation, and she says, okay, I have one thing for you. And she said that we need to take our own roots and make them new.
Say it again?
That we need to take our own roots and
Roots.
make them new.
Take our own roots and make them new.
Yes.
Okay, I'm for that.
So I just wanted to say this because, yeah, I don't know where it will go. I
Okay.
felt if I hold it in, it will be in.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll make it new.
Thank you for your talk, Mr. Goldberg. It was very emotional to me to watch this because so many of these people are my dear friends, the gurus that you showed and have come to me in other ways, and the knowledge that you conveyed is all very familiar. And I'm a student here, and I'm just wondering how in unity we can bring more of this knowledge to these teachings. Obviously, by having you here, we're doing that, but the very first time I read a Fillmore book, it took me about 2 pages to realize that he was a yogi, and the experiences he was describing are the same experiences I have. And so my heart cries out when I see all of this knowledge to bring this, and there's this sort of secret, with Emerson or Thoreau, that they're influenced by these teachings, but we don't get that out so that others, and you're doing it by your work, but how can we in unity do that?
I'm flattered that you would ask, but to be perfectly honest, I don't feel comfortable giving advice to an established institution that I respect as much as I do unity. It's not my place to advise. When I've been to unity services on Sunday mornings, I hear the message of unity, and I hear the eternal teachings of all the great religions coming through. And I don't know enough about what else is going on in unity. And I know different congregations have different approaches and have different availability of resources. Like my friend Marge Britt at Unity of Tustin, she lives near LA, and she has a whole variety of teachings that she makes available. So I can't say, all I can say is this. And I would say this if you were a group of people taking yoga teacher training or whatever. What really matters is the transformation of consciousness that takes place when people go deep into these teachings. The intellectual understanding is very important to me and to many of us, and understanding is terribly important, and texts are important, and philosophy is important. But without the inner experience, without the transformative practices of meditation and all the others, and we forget that sometimes. I don't know if you do forget that in unity, but even yoga studios forget that sometimes. I know great yogis who can, bend their bodies in miraculous ways, but they don't have a sitting meditation practice. They don't have inner silence. And to me, that is the most important thing. And whatever else you do, get people to go deep within themselves and find that peace that passeth understanding that we all have within us. That's the essence of what the Vedic seers taught us. It's the essence of what the Fillmores were about, and the essence of what all the great sages were about.